Good evening, everyone, and this is the last module, Quarter 2, Module 19, presented by Daniela L. Laredo. Policies of DRRM. The Philippine DRRM Law RA 10121 and its implementing rules and regulations. Objectives. By the end of the lesson, the students must be able to first discuss the international and national mandates for disaster risk reduction management policies and programs. Second is understand Republic Act 10121, Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act of 2010, and its implementing rules and regulations. And lastly, conduct a simple disaster risk assessment in the school or in the community. The global policy frameworks. Philippine government policies and programs for disaster risk reduction and management was anchored to Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030, the Yogo Framework for Action 2005 to 2015, and Asian Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response. These were formulated to reduce the risk during disaster as it gives concrete guides for national government, local government, organizations, communities, and stakeholders. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030. According to National Economic and Development Authority 2010, or the NADA, this was adopted by UN member states, including the Philippines, in March 2015. The Sendai Framework aims to achieve the following outcome for the next 15 years. The substantial reduction of disaster risk and losses in lives, livelihoods and health, and in the economic, physical, social, cultural, and environmental assets of persons, businesses, communities, and countries. The Yogo Framework for Action, or the HFA 2005 to 2015. According to International Strategy for Disaster Reduction, Yogo Framework for Action 2005 to 2015 is a world conference on disaster reduction that was held from January 18 to 22, 2005 in Kobe, Yogo, Japan. The HFA is a comprehensive, action-oriented response to international concern about the growing impacts of disaster on individuals, communities, and national development. Its goal was to substantially reduce disaster risks in life and in social, economic, and environmental assets of communities and countries. The Asian Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response. On December 2000, on December 24, 2009, the Asian Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response, or the AADMER, was ratified by all 10 Asian member states that include the Philippines. It focuses on the regional policy backbone in disaster management by giving priority to disaster risk reduction, thus enabling a more proactive regional framework for cooperation, coordination, technical assistance, and resource mobilization in all aspects of disaster management. What is the DRRM Act? According to National and Development Authority, or the NADA 2020, the Philippine DRRM Act of 2010, or Republic Act number 10121, as signed into law on May 27, 2010, provides the basic policies and coordination mechanism for DRRM through the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Councils, or the DRRMC, at the national, regional, and local levels. Section 15 of the law specifically indicates the criteria for identifying the lead DRRMC in preparing for, responding to, and recovering from the effects of any disaster. What are the salient features of the DRRM Act? According to Disaster Risk Reduction Network Philippines, the following are the salient features of the DRRM Act. A is the coherence with international framework, adherence to universal norms, principles, and standards of humanitarian assistance. C. Good governance through transparency and accountability. D is strengthened institutional mechanism for DRRM. E is integrated, coordinated, multi-sectoral, interagency, and community-based approach to disaster risk reduction. F. Empower of local government units or LGUs and civil society organizations or the CSO as key partner in disaster risk reduction. G. Integration of the DRRM into the educational system. H. Establishment of the DRRM Fund or the DRRMF at the national and local levels, providing for provisions in the declarations of a state of calamity, remedial measures, prohibited acts, and penalties. Who are involved in DRRM as mandated in the DRRM Act? First is the national government, local government units or the LGU, civil society organizations or the CSO, the private sector, and volunteers communities. National mandate. Strengthening the disaster risk reduction and management system was anchored to Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 or Republic Act number 10121. And this is the structure of the DRRM. National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council ND or NDRRMC. This is the DND chair, DILG, is the BOLID, DOST, and the NEDA. The members are the AFP, the DA, the DBM, and so on. The new members are the CHAD, CCC, DPWH, DFA, PNP, and so on. National DRRM Councils. According to National Economic and Development Authority or the NEDA 2020, the National DRRMC is designated with policy-making, coordination, integration, supervision, and monitoring and evaluation functions. It is headed by the Secretary of the Department of National Defense or the DND as chairperson, with the Secretary of the Department of the Interior and Local Government or the DILG as vice chairperson for disaster preparedness, the Secretary of the Department of Social Welfare and Development or the DSWD as vice chairperson for disaster response, the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology or the DOST as vice person for disaster prevention and mitigation, and the Secretary of the National Economic and Development Authority or the NEDA as the vice chairperson for disaster rehabilitation and recovery. Other members include other government agencies like DOH, DPWH, DepEd, and many more. So, ang Vice Chairperson sa Disaster Preparedness kay ang DILG, at ang Vice Chairperson for Disaster Response kay ang DSWD, while the Vice Chairperson for Disaster Prevention and Mitigation is the DOST, and the Secretary of the National Economic and Development Authority or the SANET. Sa Vice Chairperson for Disaster Rehabilitation and Recovery kay ang NEDA. Functions of the NDRRMC. One is develop a NDRRM framework, create NDRRM plan or the NDRRME, advise the President on the status of disaster preparedness, prevention, mitigation, response, and rehabilitation operations, as well as recommend to the President the declaration of a state of calamity in areas. Ensure a multi-stakeholder participation. Establish a national early warning and emergency alert systems. Develop appropriate risk transfer mechanisms. 7. Monitor the development and enforcement required by this act. Manage and mobilize resources. Monitor and provide the necessary guidelines and procedures in the Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund or the LDRRMF. Plan is develop assessment tools in coordination with the Climate Change Commission. 11 is develop vertical and horizontal coordination mechanisms, formulate a national institutional capability building program. 13. Formulate a national agenda for research and technology development. 14. Formulate and implement a framework for climate change, adaptation, and disaster risk reduction and management. 15. Constitute a technical management group. Task the OCD to conduct periodic assessment and performance monitoring of the member agencies. Last is coordinate or oversee the implementation of the country's obligations with disaster management duties. D is the regional DRRM councils or the RDRRMC. The regional DRRM councils or the RDRRMC is the regional arm of NDRRMC. They are responsible for coordinating, integrating, supervising, and evaluating DRRM activities of the local DRRM councils. It is headed by the Regional Director of the Office of Civil Defense, or the OCD. Functions of the RDRRMC: coordinate, integrate, supervise, and evaluate the activities of LDRRMC. In the next one, we will tackle the LDRRMC. Second is ensuring disaster-sensitive regional development plans. Third is establish an operating facility to be known as the Regional Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Operations Center, or the RDRRMC. C. Local DRRM councils, or the LDRRMC. The local DRRM councils shall be known as provincial or municipality disaster coordinating councils. The Barangay Development Council, or the BDC, shall undertake the powers and functions of the council at the barangay level. It is composed of multi-sectoral and multi-agency members. LDRRMCs oversee the implementation of the local DRRM plans or the LDRRMPS. Yes, formulated by the local DRRM offices or the LDRRMOs. Functions of the LDRRMCs: approve, monitor, and evaluate the implementation of the LDRRMPs. Yes. Ensure the integration of DRR and climate change adaptation. Implementation of forced or preemptive evacuation. Lastly is convenes the local council. Convene local council. D is the local DRRM offices or the LDRRMO. LDRRMOs are established in every province under the office of the governor, city under the office of the city mayor, municipality under the office of the municipality mayor, and barangay DRRM committees or the BDRRMC. For the barangay level, headed by barangay chairman, local DRRM officers sets the direction, development, implementation, and coordination of DRRM programs and activities within their territorial jurisdictions. Functions of LDRRMO: set the direction, development, and implementation of DRRM programs, design, program, coordinate DRRM programs to NDRRMC, facilitate and support risk assessment and contingency plan, consolidate local disaster risk information, organize and conduct trainings, operate a multi-hazard early warning system, formulate and implement a comprehensive LDRRMP, prepare and submit to the local sanggunian, conduct continuous disaster monitoring, that is, identify, assess, and manage hazard vulnerabilities and risks. 11 is disseminate information and raise public awareness. 12 is identify and implement cost-effective risk reduction measures or strategies. 13. Maintain database of human resources, equipment, directories, and location of critical infrastructure. 14 is develop partnership with the private sectors, CSOs, and volunteer groups. 15. Take all necessary steps in continuing the provision. Organize, equip, train, and supervise local emergency teams. Respond and manage the adverse effects of emergencies and carry out recovery activities. 18. Promote and raise public awareness and compliance with the Act. Serve as Secretariat, Executive Arm of LRRMC. Coordinate with DRRM activities. Establish network with LGU. Recommend the enhancement of local ordinance related to the Act. And last, and 23 is implement policies, approve plans and program of LRRMC. 24 establish provincial, city, municipality, barangay operation center. 25 prepare and submit report on utilization of LDRRM fund. And lastly is act on other matter that authorized by LDRRMC. Disaster volunteers. According to implementing rules and regulations, or the IRR of RA 10121, the following feature disaster volunteers. Their mobilization may be undertaken by government agencies, the civil service organizations, and private sector and local government units. 2 is their enhancement, welfare, and protection will be the responsibility of the agencies, civil service organizations, private sector, or local government units which assemble them. 3. Their accreditation and inclusion in the database are done at municipal or city level. They will follow guidelines set by the NDRRMC. They are entitled to compensatory benefits and insurance under the guidelines. Education and training. According to implementing rules and regulation or the IRR of RA 10121, education and training is ruled to first is integrate the curricular of DRR education for both of secondary and tertiary level of education, including National Service Training Program or the NSTP, whether private or public or formal and non-formal, technical vocational, indigenous learning, and out-of-school youth courses and programs. Second is encourage the youth to participate in DRRM activities headed by SK councils together with the DRRMCs. Last is impose trainings to the public sector employees that focus on emergency response and preparedness. Coordination using emergencies. Good morning. BDC Barangay. city or the municipality, provincial, regional, or the national. One barangay, diri nga sa structure. Ideally siya structure yun. Mga example, mga sila mga affected. Note, NDRRMC and LDRRMCs support LGUs which have primary responsibility as first disaster responders. Declaration of State of Calamity. According to IRR of RA 10121, it is ruled that a declaration and lifting of state of calamity by the President, it shall be recommended by National Council. It can be clustered or barangays, municipalities, cities, provinces, and regions. International humanitarian assistance may be necessary. B. Declaration and lifting of state of calamity by local sanggunian, issued based on recommendation of LDRRMC based on the result of the damage assessment. Remedial measures. According to IRR of RA 10121, it is ruled that the member agencies must mandatorily undertake the following remedial measure when the state of calamity was declared. A. Imposition of price selling on basic necessities and prime commodities as recommended by implementing agency to the President. B. Local price coordination council shall monitor, prevent, and control overpricing or profiteering and hoarding of prime commodities, medicines, and petroleum products. C is programming or reprogramming of funds for the repair and safety upgrading of public infrastructures and facilities. D is granting of no-interest loans by government financing or lending institution to the most affected section of the population. Prohibited acts according to IRR of RA 10121, the following are the prohibited acts during the declaration of state of calamity. B is dereliction. Second, preventing. 3 is buying. 4 is selling. Forcibly, diverting, accepting, possessing, using, or disposing misrepresenting. Substituting or replacing. Deliberate use and tampering. These are the mga muna ang LDRRMF, the NDRRMF of the funding of the official of civil defense. And the RRM Plan 2011 to 2028. It sets that expected outcomes, outputs, key activities, indicators, lead agencies, implementing partners, and timelines under each of the four mutually reinforcing thematic areas of disaster prevention and mitigation, disaster preparedness, disaster response, and disaster rehabilitation and recovery. Muna siya ang report ni Dani. Muna ang example ng diagram. Safer, adaptive, and disaster resilient Filipino communities towards sustainable development. Dili ang prevention and mitigation, na dili ang for rehabilitation and recovery, na dili ang preparedness, na dili ang response. So, pwede na sila pinasa ang agency diri kay ang DOST, ang agency diri is ang NEDA, ang agency diri is ang DILG, ang agency diri is ang DSWD. Safer, adaptive, and disaster resilient Filipino communities towards sustainable development is the vision of NDRRM plan for the NDRRMP. All priority areas to respond to the structure of the NDRRMC In addition, LDRRMP hopes to achieve its objectives through the utilization and application of each government agency's own expertise and capacities. Each priority area is managed and monitored by certain governments agencies to meet the objectives of the LDRRMP. Ano siya ang uban nga disaster prevention and mitigation. Sorry kay gamay kayo. Pero na siya sa PDF. Disaster response, disaster rehabilitation and recovery, disaster preparedness, and sila ang mga outcomes. That's all and thank you.